The clouds of Aurelios were not merely vapor. They were a living, breathing tapestry of violent gold and bruised violet churning endlessly 5,000 miles below the hull of the Nebula Harbor Academy. From the vantage point of the suspended monorail, the Academy looked like a silver halo thrown carelessly into the eye of a storm, held aloft only by the ancient humming resonance of the gravity stones. Irix adjusted his posture against the cold glass of the tram window. As illuminated, his body was composed of semi-solidified light and silicate lattice glowing with a faint, rhythmic pulse that usually matched his heartbeat. Today, however, his light was dim, dampened by a familiar churning nausea that had nothing to do with the altitude. He was a student of history. His species were born archivists, designed to witness, to record, and to remember. But lately, Irix had begun to loathe his own nature. The directive of the Lumenid was clear: observe. Do not interfere. It was a noble code written for historians of dead civilizations, not for a teenage boy watching a crime unfold 3 feet away from him every single morning. The morning tram was crowded. The air smelled of ozone-wet fur and the dry, dusty scent of heated scales. It was the smell of uneasy coexistence. Nebula Harbor was supposed to be the great melting pot, the diplomatic experiment, where the children of the galaxy learned to stop shooting at each other and started debating philosophy instead. In reality, it was just a high-altitude pressure cooker. To Irix's left sat a group of granners. They were hulking reptilian creatures, their skin a mosaic of moss green and slate gray scales. They took up too much space, sprawling their heavy limbs across the seats, their tails thumping against the floor with the weight of sandbags. In the center of the group sat Drak. He was the alpha, or at least he played the part with terrifying enthusiasm. His jaw was heavy-lined with protruding teeth that were not quite covered by his lips, and his eyes were the color of dirty oil. And across from them, standing because there were no seats left, or rather because no one dared offer her one, was Kira Larktail. Irix's optical sensors focused on her. She was a Falari, a species that human poets might have lazily described as cat-like, but that description did a disservice to her elegance. She was slight of build, with large triangular ears, covered in soft ash-colored fur that twitched at every sound. Her eyes were wide liquid pools of amber. But the most important part of any Falari was the tail. For a Falari, the tail was not merely an appendage for balance. It was their dignity. It was their spine extended, their social antenna, the physical manifestation of their soul. To touch a Falari's tail without permission was a grave insult. To pull it was an act of war. Kira's tail was long and beautiful, tipped with a tuft of silver fur. Tied intricately near the end was a small crystal bell, no larger than a thumb. It was a family heirloom, a symbol of a clan matriarch in training, delicate and resonant. "Hey, Whiskers!" Drak grunted, his voice sounding like gravel tumbling down a chute. The tramcar went silent. It was the silence of complicity. Irix felt his internal light dim further, turning a muddy, anxious gray. He tapped his stylus against his datapad, pretending to study the history of the Aurelios atmospheric mining wars, but his sensors were locked on the scene. Kira stiffened. She pulled her tail close to her legs, wrapping it around her shin in a defensive coil. "Leave me alone, Drak," she whispered. Her voice was steady, but her ears were flattened against her skull. "I just want to hear the music," Drak sneered. He leaned forward, his massive hand shooting out with deceptive speed. He caught the tuft of her tail. Kira gasped a sharp, pained sound. Drak yanked. Ching! The crystal bell cried out as the tail was stretched taut. "Sing for us, kitty," Drak laughed. His cronies joined in a chorus of guttural, croaking chuckles that vibrated through the floorboards. Irix watched Kira's face. She did not cry. Falari pride was legendary, and she would not give them the satisfaction of tears. But the humiliation burned in her eyes. She stumbled forward, forced to follow the pull of Drak's grip, to avoid having her spine wrenched. It was a dance of cruelty they performed every day at 7:45 in the morning. Irix looked down at his transparent hands. "Do something," a voice inside him screamed. "You are bigger than you look. You can generate a flashbang. You can blind him." But the conditioning held. "Record," his mind countered. "You are a historian. You are neutral. Coward," he corrected himself. He shifted his gaze to the back of the car, seeking a distraction from his own shame. There, in the corner seat, sat the anomaly. The human. Humans were rare at Nebula Harbor. They were latecomers to the galactic stage, viewed by the elder races, with a mixture of curiosity and mild alarm, like a toddler who had found a loaded plasma rifle. This one was named Noah Reed. Noah was unremarkable in almost every way. He was of average height with messy black hair that looked like he had cut it himself in the dark. He wore a faded gray hoodie and bulky headphones that Irix suspected were not actually playing anything. He had a notebook on his knee made of actual paper, an archaic eccentricity, and he was scratching away with a graphite pencil. Noah looked like he was a million miles away. He stared out the window at the swirling storms of Aurelios, his face blank. But Irix had been watching him for weeks. He noticed things others missed. He noticed how Noah's pencil stopped moving the moment Drax spoke. He noticed how Noah's reflection in the dark window wasn't looking at the clouds but was angled perfectly to watch Kira. The human was not oblivious. He was waiting. The tram hit a pocket of turbulence. The gravity stones beneath the chassis whined, compensating for a sudden updraft from the gas giant below. The floor tilted sharply to the right. Drac, caught off guard, while laughing, lurched. His grip on Kira's tail tightened reflexively, a spasm of brute strength. It happened in slow motion for Irix. The force was too much for the delicate silk ribbon holding the crystal bell. Snap. Kira screamed, not in pain, but in horror. The crystal bell, the symbol of her clan, the anchor of her dignity, flew free. It hit the metal grating of the floor with a heart-stopping clatter and rolled, spinning aggressively, until it came to a stop near Drax's heavy combat boot. The silence in the tram was absolute. Even the ambient hum of the engine seemed to vanish. Kira dropped to her knees, her hands reaching out desperately. "No," she breathed. Her tail was thrashing now, a sign of extreme distress fluffing out to twice its normal size. She crawled toward the bell. Drac recovered his balance. He looked down at the bell, then at the girl crawling toward him. A cruel, opportunistic grin split his face. He lifted his heavy boot and placed it firmly on the floor, inches from the bell, blocking her path. "Finders keepers, little cat," Drac rumbled. "I think this will make a nice earring for me. Or maybe a tooth filling." Kira froze. She was trembling. To retrieve the bell, she would have to physically move Drac's leg, which was impossible, or beg him to move it. Irix felt his core temperature rising. This was it. The line had been crossed. It was no longer teasing. It was theft and desecration. Irix's fingers clenched around his datapad until the screen cracked. "Stand up," he told himself. Stand up, but his legs felt like lead. The fear of the Granner. The fear of breaking protocol, the fear of being expelled, it paralyzed him. Scritch, scritch, snap. The sound of a graphite pencil breaking was surprisingly loud in the quiet car. Noah Reed stood up. He did not puff out his chest. He did not shout a challenge. He did not emit a battle cry. He simply closed his notebook, slid his pencil into his pocket, and walked across the swaying car. He moved with a strange, fluid grace that Irix had not expected from a human. He did not walk toward Drac's face. He walked toward the bell. Drac blinked, confused by the sudden intrusion of the background character. "Get lost, soft skin," Drac snarled. "This doesn't concern you." Noah ignored him. He didn't even look at the Granor. He knelt down. Drac growled a low vibration that rattled the windows. "I said back off." He raised a fist the size of a melon, ready to bring it down on the human's exposed neck. Irix wanted to shout a warning, but his voice box failed him. Noah didn't flinch. He didn't block. He simply shifted his weight a subtle tilt of his shoulder and reached past Drax's boot. His hand was fast, blurringly fast. He snatched the crystal bell from the floor in a movement so smooth it looked like a magic trick. In the same motion, he stood up and took one step back, placing himself exactly 2 feet away from Drax, just outside the optimal striking range for a Granor's swing. Drax's fist hit empty air. The momentum carried the large lizard forward, making him stumble. Noah turned his back on the bully. He looked down at Kira, who was still kneeling, looking up at him with wide, terrified eyes. "May I?" Noah asked. His voice was quiet, raspy from disuse. Kira was too stunned to speak. She nodded dumbly, extending the tip of her trembling tail toward him. Noah held the bell. The silk ribbon was frayed and broken. There was no way to tie it back on with a standard knot. It was too short and the material was too slippery. Irix watched, fascinated. What was the human doing? Noah's fingers moved. He took the frayed ends of the silk and began to weave them. Over-under loop twist. It was intricate. It was precise. It was not a knot used by humans. Irix's processor word, accessing the database. That pattern. He had seen it in the archives of the pre-Exodus Filari texts. It was the vow of the Silent Moon. It was a knot used by Filari weavers to bind ceremonial armor, a knot that tightened under tension but never pinched the skin. It was a knot that was never written down in common textbooks. It was passed from mother to daughter. In 10 seconds, the bell was secured. Noah gave it a gentle tug to test the hold. The bell chimed a clear, happy sound. "There," Noah said. "That should hold better than the last one." He stepped back, giving Kira space to stand. Kira scrambled to her feet. She clutched her tail, bringing the bell close to her chest, checking it for cracks. It was perfect. She looked at Noah, her ears swiveling forward in intense curiosity. "How?" Her voice failed. Then she tried again. "How did you know that knot? That is a family knot." Noah shrugged. He adjusted his headphones, which had slipped slightly. "I read a lot," he said simply. "Instruction manuals, history books, cereal boxes." Irix frowned. False, he thought. "I have read every book in the Academy library. That knot is not in them." Drax had recovered his balance. His face was a dark shade of bruised plum. He had been ignored, sidestepped, and made to look clumsy by a human the species they joked was made of water and anxiety. "You think you're smart, human," Drax hissed, stepping into Noah's personal space. He towered over the boy by nearly 2 feet. Noah looked up. For the first time, Irix saw his eyes clearly behind the messy hair. They were gray, like the storm outside, and they were utterly devoid of fear. There was no defiance either. Just a calm, heavy calculation. "I think," Noah said, his voice even, "that we are arriving at Sector 4. And unless you want to be late for combat strategy, you should probably move toward the doors." As if on cue, the tram's announcer chimed. Now arriving at Sector 4, combat arts and applied physics. The pneumatic doors hissed open behind Drax. The timing was supernatural. Drax looked at the doors, then back at Noah. The moment for violence had passed. The crowd was already surging toward the exit. If he attacked now against the flow of traffic, he would look like a chaotic beast, not an enforcer of order. "This isn't over, Reed," Drax spat. He shoved past Noah, his shoulder checking the human hard. Noah rocked back but didn't fall. He didn't even look at Drax as the lizard stomped away. The car emptied quickly. Soon, it was just Irix. Noah and Kira left in the center of the carriage. Kira was still holding her tail, but she was looking at Noah with an expression Irix had never seen on her face before. It was a mix of bewilderment and a dawning fragile hope. "Thank you," she said. Noah didn't smile. He just nodded, turning back to his seat to retrieve his bag. "Don't mention it. Seriously, don't." He slung his bag over one shoulder and walked out onto the platform, disappearing into the stream of students. Kira stood there for a moment, the bell chiming softly as her tail twitched. Then she turned and looked straight at Irix. Irix froze. He had been caught staring. "Did you see that?" she asked him. Irix nodded slowly. "I saw it." "He knew the knot," she whispered half to herself. "A human knew the knot." She hurried off the train, her steps lighter than they had been in months. Irix remained alone in the car for a moment longer. He looked at his datapad. The screen was cracked where he had gripped it too tight. He looked at the empty space where Noah had stood. The directive was observe. Do not interfere. But today, the history of Nebula Harbor Academy has shifted. The static equilibrium of the bully and the victim had been broken by an external force. Irix opened a new file on his datapad. He named it Subject Noah Reed. He typed his first entry, his fingers moving as fast as his thoughts. Entry 001. The human is not what he seems. He moves with an economy of motion that suggests training, yet he hides it. He possesses cultural knowledge that should be inaccessible to outsiders. And most concerning of all, he intervened. Irix looked at the sentence. He deleted the last part. And most hopeful of all, he intervened. Irix holstered his datapad and stepped out onto the platform. The air at Sector 4 was colder, sharper. He felt a strange sensation in his chest, a fluttering of his light. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Irix wasn't just recording history. He felt like he was watching a prologue. The corridor to the main academic block was a tunnel of glass, offering a panoramic view of the storm clouds. Irix hurried to catch up. Ahead of him, he could see the back of Noah's gray hoodie, and a few yards behind him, the swaying silver-tipped tail of Kira, who was clearly following the boy while pretending not to. And behind them, all lurking near the vending machines, Drac was watching too. The Granner wasn't laughing anymore. He was staring at Noah with the intense, predatory focus of a hunter who has realized that the rabbit might actually be a wolf cub. Irix activated his optical zoom, capturing the expression on Drac's face. He saved the image. The silence on the tram had been broken. The bell had been retied. And as Irix walked toward his first class, he realized that the knot Noah had tied was not just on a tail. He had tied the three of them, the bully, the victim, and the observer, together. The storm outside raged on, but the real turbulence was just beginning inside the halls. The library of Nebula Harbor Academy was a cathedral of silence and data. It was a massive dome-shaped structure located at the very apex of the station, where the gravity was lightest. Shelves of physical books, a rarity in the galaxy, floated in slow, lazy orbits around a central pillar of hard-light holographic interfaces. 3 hours after the tram incident, Kira found herself lurking behind a stack of floating encyclopedias on Terran botany. She wasn't stalking. She told herself this firmly. She was conducting reconnaissance. Noah Reed was sitting at a table near the edge of the dome, where the view of the gas giant was most vertigo-inducing. He had his headphones around his neck now, and 3 different books were open in front of him. One was on geological stability of floating structures. One was on advanced calculus, and the third, Kira squinted, her vertical pupils narrowing. The third book was upside down, and it looked like a cookbook. She took a deep breath, smoothing the fur on her ears. "You are a daughter of the Larktail clan," she told herself. "You do not hide behind vegetables. You go and say thank you like a civilized sentient being." She stepped out from behind the floating shelf. Her tail, traitorous, as always, gave a nervous flick, causing the bell to chime loudly in the quiet library. Ding. Noah didn't jump. He just turned a page of the geology book. "You can come out, Kira. You're blocking the light from the biometric sensors." Kira flushed the heat, rising to the tips of her ears. She marched over to the table, trying to regain her composure. "I wasn't hiding," she lied. "I was looking for a book on plants." "Terran botany is aisle 4, Noah said without looking up. "You were in aisle 7. That's xenobiological fungus." Kira pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down. She placed her hands flat on the table. Okay, fine. I wanted to ask you something. Noah finally looked up. He closed the geology book. The knot, she confirmed. I checked the library database. I checked the public archives. That knot isn't there. It isn't even in the Encyclopedia of Galactic Knots and Bindings, Volume 12. So, tell me the truth. Are you a spy? Did you steal a Filari brain? Noah blinked. A corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. A Filari brain. That's a very specific organ to steal. Stop deflecting. Kira leaned forward. That knot is called the vow of the silent moon. It's used for... She hesitated. It's used for binding things that are precious. Mothers use it for swaddling clothes. Warriors use it for armor. Husbands use it for... She stopped, her face turning a darker shade of pink. For wedding gifts, Noah finished for her. Kira's mouth dropped open. You do know. Noah leaned back in his chair, the plastic creaking. He looked tired. Not sleepy tired, but soul tired. I told you, I read. My mother liked collecting old data from different cultures. She had a copy of a Filari weaving manual from before the Great Migration. I memorized it when I was 10 because I was bored and it looked like a puzzle. Your mother, Kira asked, sensing a shift in his tone. She's gone, Noah said efficiently, closing that door before Kira could even peek through it. Look, it was just a knot. Don't read too much into it. I just hate seeing things unravel. Kira looked at him. There was something in his voice, a rigid control, a deliberate flatness, that reminded her of her own tale when she forced it to be still in front of Drac. He was hiding something. Not a crime, perhaps, but a weight. Well, Kira said softly. Thank you. You didn't just tie the bell back on. You stopped Drac. Nobody stops Drac. They usually just watch. Watching is safer, Noah said. He looked out the window at the swirling clouds. I should have just watched. Why didn't you? Noah turned his gaze back to her. Because he was going to step on it. And it looked expensive, Kira laughed. It was a genuine bubbling sound that made a few students at nearby tables look over. It is. It's made of singing quartz from the caves of my homeworld. If he had stepped on it, my father would have declared war on the entire Granor species. Good thing I saved us from an intergalactic diplomatic incident then, Noah deadpanned. Yes, a hero, Kira teased. She paused, then added, You know Drac won't forget this. He thinks he owns the school. You challenged his territory. I didn't challenge anything, Noah said, reopening his book. I just picked up some litter. He's going to come for you, Kira warned. He's big, he's mean, and he has friends who are almost as big and twice as mean. I can run fast, Noah said. They have 4 legs. You have 2. I have excellent cardio. Kira shook her head, her tail swaying thoughtfully behind her chair. We should stick together. Safety in numbers. Plus, I need someone to help me with my calculus homework. I'm failing gravity mechanics. Noah looked at her. He seemed about to refuse to push her away and return to his solitude. But then, he looked at the bell on her tail tied securely with the knot he had made. I charge 20 credits an hour for tutoring, he said. I can pay you in fish jerky, Kira countered. Top quality, imported. Noah sighed a sound of long-suffering resignation. Make it spicy jerky and you have a deal. From behind a shelf of history of nebular physics, Irix zoomed his visual receptors in on the pair. He noted the relaxed posture of the human, the animated gestures of the Filari. He noted the way the light from the window caught the crystal bell, casting a small rainbow across the table between them. He opened his file again. Entry 002. The subjects have established a symbiotic alliance. The human provides protection and theoretical knowledge. The Filari provides social integration and dried protein snacks. Probability of conflict with the Granor faction has increased to 99%. Irix felt a strange thrill. He knew he should be worried. He knew that Drac was dangerous. But as he watched Noah point a pencil at Kira's textbook and explain a vector equation, Irix realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't just recording history because he had to. He was recording it because he wanted to see what happened next. The tram ride had been the spark. The library was the fuel. And outside the storm of Aurelios churned, waiting for the fire. The week following the incident on the monorail was a study in awkward geometry. Irix, ever the diligent historian, noted that the previously rigid social lines of Nebula Harbor Academy had begun to blur specifically around Table 4 in the library. Kira Larktail was attempting to perform a formal Falari gratitude ritual, but it was going terribly wrong. In Falari culture, gratitude was a physical language. It involved a slow lowering of the ears, a precise exposing of the neck, and a rhythmic gentle swaying of the tail to indicate trust. However, Kira was 19 years old, sitting in a public library and suffering from acute social anxiety. Instead of a graceful sway, her tail was thrashing against the leg of her chair like a trapped eel, and her ears were swiveling so fast they were practically vibrating. Noah Reed sat across from her, staring at a holographic projection of a geological survey. He looked up, blinked, and then looked at the door. "You can go if you want," Noah said, his voice flat. "I am not keeping you prisoner." Kira froze mid-twitch. "I do not want to go. I am trying to thank you properly." "You look like you are preparing to sprint away," Noah observed. "Or like you are having a muscle spasm. Should I call the medical droid?" "No." Kira hissed, her fur fluffing up. "My tail. It is doing the thing. I am trying to say that I owe you a life debt, but my body thinks we are about to be attacked by a vacuum cleaner." Irix, watching from behind a stack of ancient star charts, suppressed a chuckle. He tapped an entry into his datapad. Subject interspecies communication. Status critically inefficient but highly entertaining. "You don't owe me a life debt," Noah said, closing the projection. "You owe me spicy fish jerky. That was the deal." Kira reached into her bag and slammed a vacuum-sealed package onto the table. "Here, extra spicy, imported from the abyssal trenches of my homeworld. It will burn your tongue off." Noah picked up the package, examining it with the seriousness of a bomb disposal expert. "Acceptable currency," he said. He tore it open and took a bite without hesitation. Kira watched him, her amber eyes wide. Most humans found Falari cuisine indistinguishable from biological warfare agents. Noah chewed thoughtfully, swallowed and nodded. "Good. Now open your calculus textbook. You are calculating the gravitational shear wrong. You are treating the mass as a constant, but on a gas giant, the mass density fluctuates." For the next 2 hours, the library became their sanctuary. It was a strange alliance. Noah possessed an intuitive, almost frightening understanding of the gravity stones. He did not just solve the equations, he seemed to feel them. He would look at a complex formula regarding the Academy's suspension field and correct it before he even finished writing the numbers. Kira conversely struggled with the abstract math, but she possessed a kinetic genius. When Noah knocked a stylus off the table, Kira's hand was there to catch it before it had fallen 2 inches. She moved with a spatial awareness that defied standard physics, sensing the air currents and the subtle shifts in the floor plates. "You feel the station moving," Noah noted, watching her catch a falling datapad without looking. "Don't you?" Kira asked, twirling the stylus. "It breathes. The stones underneath us. They hum. Sometimes they skip a beat like a heart." Noah went very still. He looked at her, and for a second the mask of the bored student slipped. "Yes," he whispered. "They skip a beat." Irix zoomed in on Noah's face. There was a look of recognition there, profound and guarded. It was the look of 2 people who heard the same invisible music. That night, the Academy slept, but the stones did not. The corridors of Nebula Harbor were lit by the soft bioluminescent glow of the emergency strips. Irix was drifting through the Hall of Foundations, his light dim to near invisibility. He told himself he was doing rounds for the History Club, but he knew he was patrolling. He was looking for Noah. He found him near the central core. The core was a massive pillar of transparent aluminum that ran through the center of the academy, housing the primary gravity stone, a jagged floating monolith of black rock that pulsed with purple veins. It was the heart that kept the entire school from plummeting into the crushing depths of Aurelios. Noah was standing with his forehead pressed against the glass. He was not wearing his headphones. His hand was splayed against the transparent surface, and his eyes were closed. Irix drifted closer, silent as a shadow. "I hear you," Noah whispered. It was not a hallucination. The stone inside the chamber flared, its purple veins brightening in response to Noah's voice. "You are tired," Noah murmured to the rock. "I know. It is a heavy load. 500,000 tons of steel and ego." He paused, listening to a sound Irix could not hear. Then Noah sighed, a sound so heavy it seemed to pull at his shoulders. "My mother asked me to check on you," Noah said softly. "She wanted to know if the design held. She wanted to know if the people up here were worth the strain." He opened his eyes, staring into the swirling violet light of the stone. "I haven't decided yet, Mom. I really haven't." Irix felt a chill ripple through his silicate lattice. This was not just a student with an aptitude for physics. This was the son of an architect, perhaps one of the original designers. And he was not here just to study. He was here to judge. Entry 005. Irix recorded silently. Subject: Noah Reed has a personal connection to the station's infrastructure. His objective is assessment. Potential outcome: if he decides the academy is not worth it, does he have the power to let it fall? The thought was terrifying. Irix backed away, his internal light flickering with anxiety. He needed to watch this human. He needed to watch him very closely. 2 days later, the atmosphere in the academy shifted from academic stress to primal anticipation. It was the week before the Day of Honor. The Day of Honor was a tradition as old as the academy itself. It was a sanctioned festival where grievances between students could be settled through supervised duels. The administration called it constructive conflict resolution. The students called it Fight Club with extra paperwork. The main courtyard was buzzing. Holographic banners streamed through the air, listing the rules of engagement. Rule 1: no lethal force. Rule 2: victory by submission or ring out. Rule 3: preservation of dignity is mandatory. Irix stood near the registration kiosk, watching the crowd. The Granors were out in force, preening and flexing their scales, polished to a shine. The Falari were gathered in tight circles, looking anxious. Kira and Noah were sitting on a bench near the edge of the plaza. They were sharing a bag of what looked like terrestrial potato chips. "I hate this week," Kira muttered, her ears flattened. "It smells like testosterone and bad decisions." "It is a pressure release valve," Noah said, examining a chip. "Sociologically speaking, it prevents uncontrolled riots by channeling aggression into ritual." "You sound like a textbook," Kira said, nudging him with her elbow. "I prefer to think of myself as well-read." "It's barbaric," Kira said, her voice dropping. She looked at her hands. "Back home, we fight to protect the clan. We don't fight for show. We don't fight to prove we are better than someone else." "Then don't fight," Noah said simply. "It is not that simple," Kira replied. She looked out at the clouds swirling below the transparent barrier of the plaza. "Everyone looks at the Falari here and sees pets. They see the fur, the big eyes, the tails. They think we are cute. They want to pet us. And if we get angry, they think it is adorable." She clenched her fists. "I came here to study astronavigation. I wanted to be a captain. But every day Drac and his friends remind me that to them, I am just a toy with a bell on it." "You are not a toy," Noah said. He didn't look at her. He looked at the clouds. You are the best kinetic pilot in the sophomore class. I saw your simulation scores. Kira looked at him surprised. You checked my scores. I like data. Noah shrugged. The data says you are lethal in a cockpit. Drac is just heavy furniture. Kira smiled a small, genuine smile. Furniture. I like that. Their moment of peace was shattered by a booming laugh. Well, if it isn't the dynamic duo, Drac bellowed. He strode toward them, flanked by two other Granners, who looked like they shared a single brain cell between them. Drac was holding a datapad. He looked larger than usual, his chest puffed out with malicious intent. Good news, Whiskers, Drac grinned, showing too many teeth. I just signed us up. Kira went cold. Signed up for what? The demonstration duel, Drac said, waving the pad. The opening ceremony. It is tradition for a Granner to showcase dominance against a lesser species. I volunteered for you. I told the committee you were eager to prove that cats always land on their feet. I didn't agree to this, Kira said, standing up. Her tail lashed behind her. Oh, it's already approved, Drac sneered. If you back out now, it goes on the record as a forfeit by cowardice. Imagine that. The first Falari in 10 years to forfeit before the bell even rings. Your clan would be so proud. It was a trap. A perfect social trap. If Kira refused, she confirmed every stereotype about her species being weak and timid. If she accepted, she would be beaten senseless in front of the entire school. Noah stood up. He moved slowly, deliberately inserting himself between Drac and Kira. She declines, Noah said. Drac looked down at the human. She can't decline soft skin. Her name is on the list. Unless she wants to admit she is scared. Cancel it, Noah said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a resonance that made the stones in the floor vibrate slightly. Drac leaned in, his hot breath washing over Noah's face. Or, what are you going to tie a knot in my tail? Stick to your books, human. This is predator business. Prey just watches. Drac turned and walked away, his laughter echoing off the plaza walls. The office of Principal Selene was essentially a giant aquarium suspended from the ceiling of the administration spire. Selene was a hydrosentient, a species that resembled a bioluminescent jellyfish, with a brain the size of a grand piano. She floated in her tank, communicating through a series of flashing lights and synthesized speech that echoed from speakers in the walls. The rules are clear, Mr. Reed. Selene's voice was a melodic chime. Registration is open to all. Challenges can be issued. It was forced, Noah argued. He stood in front of the tank, his posture rigid. Drac registered her without consent. It is bullying disguised as tradition. Miss Larktail has not filed a formal objection. Selene pulsed a soft blue light. If she comes to me and states that she is afraid, I will cancel the match. She won't do that, Noah said, frustration creeping into his voice. You know the Falari culture. Admitting fear is worse than defeat. Drac knows that. He is weaponizing her pride against her. Pride is a heavy garment, Selene mused, her tentacles drifting lazily. Sometimes one must shed it to survive, or one must grow strong enough to carry it. This isn't a philosophy class, Noah snapped. It's a beatdown. Selene's lights shifted to a sterner violet. The Academy prepares students for the galaxy, Mr. Reed. The galaxy is not fair. It does not care about consent or bullying. It cares about strength and resolve. If Miss Larktail wishes to be a captain, she must learn to navigate storms, not just avoid them. She floated closer to the glass. And as for you, Noah, your mother also had strong opinions about how this station should be run. She believed in testing structures until they broke to see where the weaknesses were. Noah flinched. We are talking about people, not girders. Are we? Selene asked. Go. The duel stands unless she withdraws. Noah found Kira in the simulation labs. She was sitting in the cockpit of a trainer, the power off, staring at the blank console. I tried, Noah said, leaning against the doorframe. Selene won't cancel it unless you admit you were scared. I am scared, Kira said softly. She didn't turn around. I am terrified. He has 300 pounds of muscle and scale. If he grabs my tail, she shuddered. But I can't say it. If I say it, Drac wins. If I say it, every Granor looks at every Falari and laughs. She turned the pilot's chair around. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. I am going to fight him. Noah pushed off the doorframe. Kira, you can't beat him in a straight fight. Physics is not on your side. Mass acceleration equals you getting crushed. Then I won't fight straight, Kira said. I am fast. I am smaller. And she looked at the bell on her tail. I have a friend who is good at math. She looked at Noah with pleading eyes. Help me prepare. Analyze his fighting style. Tell me where his center of gravity is. Tell me how to make him fall. Noah hesitated. He looked at her small and determined, and he felt the weight of his own secret mission pressing on him. He was supposed to be the observer, the judge. Okay, Noah said. I will help you strategize, but you have to promise me one thing. Anything. When the duel happens, Noah, said his voice hard, I stay in the stands. I do not intervene. No matter what happens, no matter how bad it looks, I stay in the seat. I cannot be your shield, Kira. You have to do this. Kira nodded solemnly. I promise. You stay in the stands. This is my fight. It was a logical promise. It was a sensible promise. And as Irix recorded the conversation from the hallway, he knew with absolute certainty that it was a promise that was going to be broken. The day before the duel, the tension in the academy was thick enough to chew. Noah and Kira spent every free hour in the gym. Noah sat with his notebook watching holograms of Drac's previous fights, breaking down the Granor's movements into vectors and force diagrams. He overextends on his right hook, Noah called out. He relies on the tail for counterbalance. If you bait the right hand, his left leg is vulnerable for 0.4 seconds. Kira was a blur of motion, dodging training drones, practicing low sweeps. She was exhausted, her fur matted with sweat, but she was focused. Low center of gravity, she panted. Bait the hook, sweep the leg. And watch the tail, Noah warned. He uses it like a club. They were interrupted by the arrival of Drac himself. He walked into the gym not to train, but to gloat. He was eating a protein bar, chewing with his mouth open. Look at them, Drac laughed to his entourage. The kitten and her human pet, trying to do math to win a fistfight. He stopped in front of Noah. Noah didn't look up from his notebook. You know, Drac said, leaning down. I was thinking, after I break her, maybe I'll break you. Just for fun. Humans are so squishy. Noah slowly lowered his pencil. He looked up at Drac. Do you know why humans don't have natural weapons, Drac? Noah asked calmly. Drac snorted. Because you are weak. No, Noah said. Because we build them. Or we become them. For a second, the air around Noah seemed to distort, a heavy, oppressive wave that made the hair on Kira's arms stand up. The floor tiles beneath Noah's feet gave a sharp crack. Drac took a step back, his lizard brain flashing a warning signal he didn't understand. Then the moment passed. Noah went back to his notebook. You have crumbs on your chin, he said. Drac wiped his chin furiously, growled something incoherent, and stomped away. But looking at his retreating back, Irix saw a flicker of doubt in the Granor's posture. The night before the duel, Irix received a notification on his datapad. Assignment, official record keeper for the Day of Honor opening match. Combatants Kira Larktail versus Drac of the Granor. Irix stared at the screen. He felt sick. His stomach, or the energy matrix that simulated a stomach, twisted into a knot tighter than the one on Kira's tail. He was going to have to film it. He was going to have to record his friend getting beaten. Or worse. He looked out his dormitory window. Across the quad, he could see the light on in the gym. Kira was still there. Noah was still there. Irix opened his log. Entry 009. The rising action is complete. The variables are set. The kinetic energy is built up and waiting for release. I have studied history for 3 years. I know how this story usually goes. The big crush, the small. The strong eat the weak. But he looked at the image he had captured earlier. Noah standing between Drac and Kira, the floor tile cracked beneath his foot. But sometimes when Irix typed, the variables change. Tomorrow, gravity will be tested. And I fear that something is going to break that cannot be fixed. He saved the entry and turned off his light, but sleep did not come. The humming of the stones beneath the floor was too loud. It sounded like a countdown. The Day of Honor Arena was a masterpiece of architectural insanity. It was a suspended disk of transparent polymers floating independently from the main station structure, tethered only by magnetic fields and the collective anxiety of the student body. The gravity here was dialed down to 70% standard, allowing the heavier species like the granors to move with surprising grace and the lighter species like the Falari to practically fly. Irix hovered near the commentator's box, his recording sensors calibrated to maximum resolution. The stands were a riot of color and noise. Students from 100 different worlds were packed into the tiered seating, chewing on snacks that ranged from popcorn to live grubs. The air smelled of ozone and anticipation. Testing, testing. The announcer's voice boomed, a six-armed insectoid who loved the sound of his own clicking mandibles. Welcome to the opening duel. In the red corner, weighing in at 350 pounds of prime reptilian muscle, Drac the Crusher. And in the blue corner, weighing in at well considerably less, Kira of the Larktail clan. A roar went up from the Granor section. The Falari section was quieter, a nervous rustling of tails and whiskers. Kira stood in the center of the ring. She wore a lightweight sparring suit, tight-fitting to avoid drag, with her tail wrapped in protective athletic tape, leaving only the crystal bell free at the tip. She looked terrified. Her ears were flattened so hard against her skull, they were almost invisible. Drac entered the ring like a parade float of arrogance. He flexed his scales, catching the artificial sunlight, and pointed a claw at Kira. High above the arena, Principal Celine's voice chimed through the speakers, serene and terrifying. The rules are absolute. No lethal force. No permanent injury. Victory is achieved by ring out or submission. Furthermore, any deliberate targeting of sensitive biological features for the purpose of humiliation will be met with immediate disqualification and academic censure. Drac rolled his eyes. He cracked his knuckles, a sound like dry wood snapping. Don't worry, Principal. I'll be gentle. I like my toys intact. Begin! Drac lunged. For a creature of his size, he was alarmingly fast. He covered the distance in 2 strides, a massive backhand swing aimed at Kira's head. But Kira was faster. In the low gravity, she was a leaf in a gale. She ducked under the swing, pushing off the floor with one hand to vault over Drac's outstretched arm. The crystal bell on her tail chimed, ting, a clear, sharp note that echoed in the silent focus of the ring. Hold still, rat! Drac roared, spinning around. Kira landed softly 10 feet away. She was breathing hard, her eyes wide. Keep moving, she told herself. Don't let him grab you. If he grabs you, it's over. Drac changed tactics. Instead of swinging, he stomped. The impact sent a shockwave through the floating disc. Kira stumbled, her footing lost for a fraction of a second. Drac grinned. He feinted a left hook, watching Kira dodge right exactly as he expected. Then, with a cruel precision that belied his brutish appearance, he snatched at the air where her tail was whipping behind her. Kira shrieked. It wasn't a tactical cry. It was pure, unadulterated panic. The trauma of the monorail, the months of torment, the feeling of her dignity being yanked, it all crashed down on her. She flinched violently, abandoning her defensive stance to curl her tail, in leaving her entire left side exposed. Drac didn't grab the tail, but the threat was enough. He slammed his shoulder into her exposed ribs. The impact was sickening. Kira flew backward, tumbling across the transparent floor. She skidded to a halt, inches from the edge of the ring, gasping for air. The crowd gasped. "Get up, kitty," Drac taunted, walking slowly toward her. "Or just stay down. It's safer down there." Irix zoomed in on Kira's face. She was trembling. Tears were welling in her amber eyes. She looked up at the stands. Thousands of faces looked back, some jeering, some pitying, most just hungry for the spectacle. She looked for Noah. He was sitting in the third row, his face a mask of stone. He wasn't looking at Drac. He was looking at her. He tapped his own chest right over his heart, then pointed at her tail. "Your center," he had told her in the gym. "Your tail isn't a liability. It's your rudder. It's your balance." Kira gritted her teeth. She forced herself to uncurl her tail. It throbbed with phantom pain, but she let it extend, feeling the air currents, feeling the vibration of Drac's heavy footsteps approaching. "I am not a pet," she thought. "I am a larktail." Drac reached down to grab her by the scruff of her neck, intending to toss her out of the ring like a sack of garbage. Kira moved. She didn't run away. She spun. She dropped low, planting her hands on the floor, and whipped her legs around. But it wasn't a leg sweep. It was a tail sweep. For the first time in the history of the Academy, a Falari used her tail as a blunt force weapon. The appendage packed with muscle, usually used for climbing trees on high-gravity worlds, whipped through the air with a sonic crack. It struck Drac directly on the ankle bone. The sound was like a pistol shot. Drac howled, his leg buckling under the unexpected focused impact. He wobbled, his arms windmilling. The crowd went silent, then exploded. "Did you see that?" Irix whispered into his recorder, his voice trembling. "She hit him. She actually hit him." Drac recovered, but his eyes had changed. The mockery was gone. In its place was a red, burning rage. He wasn't fighting a student anymore. He was fighting an insult. "You little freak," he snarled. All pretense of a duel vanished. He abandoned his guard and charged, not to push her out, but to hurt her. Kira tried to dodge, but Drac was fueled by fury. He ignored a jab to his ribs and lunged, his hand closing around the base of her tail. "Got you!" he screamed. He didn't just hold it. He twisted. Kira screamed, a sound that tore through the arena. It was against the rules. It was against the law. But Drac didn't care. He raised his other fist, preparing to break her spine while she was pinned by her own anatomy. The air in the arena suddenly became very heavy. It wasn't a metaphor. The atmospheric pressure dropped. The floating disk of the arena shuddered violently. Beneath the transparent floor, the gravity stones that held the platform aloft began to groan, a deep, geological grrr rumble that vibrated in everyone's teeth. In the third row, Noah Reed stood up. He didn't climb over the railing. He didn't shout. He simply walked down the stairs. The students in his path scrambled out of the way, not because he pushed them, but because the air around him felt charged with static electricity. "Stop," Noah said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise of the crowd like a laser. Drac hesitated, his fist raised. He looked at Noah. "Sit down, human, or you're next." "I am invoking Article 7, Section 4 of the Dueling Code." Noah said, his voice echoing weirdly, as if the arena speakers were amplifying him without a microphone. Principal Celine's voice cut in sharp and immediate. "Pause match." The referee, a terrified, multi-limbed creature, blew his whistle. Drac reluctantly loosened his grip on Kira's tail, but didn't let go. "Article 7, Celine's voice mused. "The right of the intercessor. If a combatant suffers a deliberate violation of sacred anatomy, a classmate may offer to stand in their place to defend their honor." She paused. "It has not been invoked in 50 years. It is archaic." "It is the law," Noah said. He reached the edge of the barrier. He looked at Kira, who was lying on the floor, clutching her tail, tears streaming down her face. "Kira," Noah said gently. "Do you accept?" Kira looked up. She saw Drac's looming shadow. She saw Noah standing there in his gray hoodie, looking like he was about to take a nap, yet radiating a terrifying calmness. She nodded. "I accept." Drac threw Kira aside. She scrambled out of the ring, collapsing into the arms of the medical droids. Drac turned to face Noah, cracking his neck. "Finally," Drac grinned. "I've been wanting to squash you for weeks. No tail to pull on you soft skin. Just bones to break." Noah climbed the steps into the ring. He walked to the center. He had no sparring suit, no protective gear, just his sneakers and his hoodie. "Begin!" the announcer shouted, sounding unsure. Drac didn't wait. He charged a freight train of scales and fury. He aimed a punch that would have taken Noah's head off. Noah didn't move. The crowd screamed. But Drac's fist didn't connect. 6 inches from Noah's face, Drac stumbled. His leading foot hit the ground with a thud that sounded unnaturally heavy, as if his boot had suddenly turned into lead. The momentum threw his punch wide. Noah took a half step to the left. Just a half step. Drac flew past him, crashing into the barrier. "What?" Drac shook his head, pushing himself off the wall. "You tripped me." "The gravity in this quadrant is unstable," Noah said conversationally. "You should watch your step." Drac roared and charged again. This time he came low, trying to tackle Noah. Noah raised a hand, palm open, fingers splayed. He made a small lifting motion. Drac's charge faltered. He began to float. His heavy reptilian body drifted upward, as if gravity had simply decided to take a coffee break. Drac flailed his claws, scrabbling at the air. "Put me down!" Drac screamed. "As you wish," Noah whispered. He turned his hand over and pressed down. Thumb! Drac hit the floor. It wasn't a normal fall. It was as if a giant invisible hand had swatted him out of the sky. He lay on the transparent polymer, gasping, pressed flat by an unseen weight. The entire arena was dead silent. Irix's recorder was capturing every frame, but his processor couldn't make sense of it. Humans didn't do this. Humans were engineers and poets. They didn't command the fundamental forces of the universe. Noah stood over Drac. He wasn't glowing. He wasn't shouting. He looked bored. But around the ring, small pebbles and debris began to orbit him, caught in his personal gravitational field. "You rely on mass," Noah said to the groaning Granor. "You think mass gives you power. But mass is just a suggestion to gravity." Drac struggled to his knees. He was strong, incredibly strong. He fought against the crushing weight, his muscles bulging, veins popping in his neck. "I will break you," he managed to stand. It was a feat of strength that deserved applause, but no one clapped. Noah looked impressed. "Good. You have spirit." Noah glanced toward the sidelines. Kira was sitting up now, her tail wrapped in a bandage. She was holding her comms unit. She caught Noah's eye and nodded. She closed her eyes, her ears twitching. Breath. Her voice came through the earpiece Noah was wearing. "He is favoring his left leg. His heartbeat is erratic. He is going to lunge right." Kira was reading the vibrations in the floor. She was the sensor. Noah was the effector. Drac lunged right. Noah didn't need to look. He twisted his wrist. The gravity under Drac's right foot vanished, while the gravity under his left foot tripled. Drac did a pirouette that was almost comical, spinning in midair, before crashing face first into the floor again. It was a dismantling. It wasn't a fight. It was a physics lesson. Drac lay on the ground, panting. He looked up at Noah with pure fear. He couldn't touch him. He couldn't even get close to him. The human was a ghost, a demon of force and vector. Noah walked over to him. He knelt down, just out of reach. "This is the part where you usually laugh," Noah said softly. "Why aren't you laughing, Drac?" Drac snarled and tried to bite Noah's leg. Noah sighed. He stood up and raised both hands. The gravity stones beneath the arena responded. The hum became a roar. The debris orbiting Noah spun faster, turning into a blur. Drac began to lift off the ground again, but this time he was held in a crucifix position, his arms and legs splayed by opposing gravitational tides. He hung there 5 feet in the air, helpless. Noah stepped closer. The air pressure was intense. "I could crush your knee," Noah said, his voice amplified by the vibrating air. "I could increase the gravity on your kneecap to 10 Gs until the bone turns to powder. You would never walk again. You would never bully anyone again." The crowd gasped. Celine's tank flashed a warning red. Drax's eyes went wide. He believed him. He felt the pressure building on his joints. "Is that what you want?" Noah asked. "Is that the kind of strength you respect, the power to break things?" Drax couldn't speak. He shook his head frantically. "Then show me," Noah said. He lowered his hands slowly. Drax descended. But Noah didn't let him stand. He guided him down, forcing him into a kneeling position. The gravity locked around Drax's shins, cementing him to the floor, while the rest of his body was free. He was kneeling before Noah. He was kneeling before the Filari section. Noah stood in front of him, hands in his hoodie pockets. The storm of power dissipated, leaving only a ringing silence. "If you have any honor left," Noah said, his voice returning to its normal, quiet rasp, "you will concede. Or I will keep you kneeling here until the academy rusts and falls into the clouds." Drax looked at the crowd. He looked at his friends who were cowering in the stands. He looked at Kira, who was watching him, with a mixture of pain and pity. The pride broke. You could almost hear it snap like a dry twig. "I yield," Drax croaked. "I yield," louder, Noah said, "for the people in the back." "I yield," Drax roared, his voice cracking. "I submit," Noah nodded. He snapped his fingers. The invisible weight vanished. Drax slumped forward, gasping for air, defeated not by fists, but by the sheer crushing weight of his own inadequacy. "Winner by submission," the announcer screamed, remembering he had a job. "Noah Reed." The crowd didn't cheer immediately. They were too stunned. Then a single clap started from the Filari section. Then another. Then the humans. Then the rest of the school. It wasn't a raucous cheer of bloodlust. It was a thunderous applause of respect. Noah didn't bow. He didn't wave. He turned and walked straight to the medical area. He knelt beside Kira. "Hey," he said. "Nice tail sweep." Kira looked at him. Her eyes were huge. You are a gravity mage. Why didn't you tell me, technically?" Noah said, checking her bandages. "I am just a very intuitive geology student." "You made him fly," Kira accused. "He tripped," Noah said, a faint smile touching his lips. Before they could say more, the arena speakers chimed. "Noah Reed, Kira Larktail, please report to the principal's office immediately. Do not stop for snacks. Do not pass go." Noah sighed and helped Kira to her feet. "Well," he said, "I think I am about to be expelled." "If you go," Kira said, wrapping her uninjured hand around his arm, "I go. I know a knot that binds people together, remember?" Noah looked down at her hand. He didn't pull away. "Let's go face the jellyfish," he said. As they walked out of the arena, Irix watched them go. He looked at Drax, who was still sitting in the center of the ring, staring at his hands, his worldview shattered. Irix typed his entry. Entry 010. The climax has occurred. The hierarchy is inverted. The human did not just break the bully. He broke the physics of the encounter. And for the first time, I believe the academy is not just a school. It is a crucible. He closed his datapad. He had a meeting to crash. He was a historian, after all. He needed to be where the history was happening. And right now, history was walking toward the principal's office, hand in hand. The silence in the office of Principal Selene was heavier than the gravity in the arena had been. It was a fluid, pressurized silence, amplified by the gentle, rhythmic bubbling of the filtration system that kept the principal's aquatic tank pristine. Noah Reed stood in the center of the room, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his hoodie. Beside him, Kira Larktail sat on a floating, ergonomic chair designed for lumbar support, though her tail was currently wrapped anxiously around the chair's central strut. Irix hovered in the corner, his optical sensors dimmed to a respectful low-power mode, though his internal recording drive was spinning at maximum velocity. Principal Celine floated in the center of her tank, her bioluminescent tentacles drifting like silk ribbons in a gentle current. Her colors shifted slowly from a stern warning violet to a contemplative deep ocean blue. "I have received 42 complaints from the Parents Association in the last 20 minutes, Celine said. Her voice, synthesized through the room's speakers, sounded like a cello being played underwater. The Granor representatives are claiming excessive use of force. The Falari representatives are claiming divine retribution. The custodial staff is simply upset that there are stress fractures in the arena floor." Noah looked at his sneakers. "The floor was already compromised. I just accelerated the inevitable." "Do not debate structural engineering with me, Mr. Reed." Celine pulsed a soft orange light. "I am not angry about the floor. Floors can be replaced. Reputations, however, are far more fragile." She drifted closer to the glass, her massive, intelligent eye fixing on Noah. "You demonstrated a level of kinetic manipulation that is classified as military grade in 12 systems. You humiliated a student leader. You disrupted a sacred festival." Noah lifted his head. "I stopped a bully from breaking a girl's spine." "Yes," Celine conceded her light, turning a softer, approving teal. "You did. And you did it without breaking any of his bones, though I believe his ego is currently in critical condition. That is the only reason you are not currently on a shuttle back to Earth." She turned her gaze to Kira. "And you, Miss Larktail. It has been 3 decades since a Falari used a tail sweep in an official duel. Your ancestors would be conflicted, horrified at the lack of grace, but undoubtedly pleased with the efficiency." Kira sat up straighter, her ears twitching. "I did not want to hurt him, Principal, but I could not let him treat me like an accessory." "Precisely," Celine said. "Which brings us to the reason you are here. This duel has exposed a fault line in our academy. We cannot pretend it was an isolated incident." The holographic projector on Celine's desk hummed to life. A 3-dimensional image shimmered into existence. It was an older Falari woman, her fur a distinguished silver gray, wearing the ceremonial robes of a clan matriarch. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and currently narrowed in a mix of pride and irritation. Kira gasped. "Auntie Mira." "Elder Mira," the hologram corrected gently, though her tail gave a welcoming flick. "Kira, I saw the feed. Your form was terrible, but your spirit was adequate." Kira flushed, looking down, but there was a small smile on her face. Elder Mira turned her gaze to Celine. "Principal, for years the Falari Council has sent our children to Nebula Harbor in good faith. We were told this was a place of exchange, not endurance. Seeing my niece's tail used as a handle for a Granor's amusement is not what we signed up for." "We are aware of the failure, Elder," Celine replied. "Awareness is passive," Mira said sharply. "We require action. We are proposing the immediate implementation of an interspecies body respect code. It must be codified. It must be taught. It cannot be an unwritten rule anymore, because clearly some species cannot read between the lines." Before Celine could respond, the door to the office slid open. A human man walked in. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with salt and pepper hair, and a face lined by years of patience. He wore the simple tunic of the teaching staff. It was Dr. Rana, the professor of xenolinguistics and ethics. "I second the Elder's motion," Dr. Rana said, his voice calm but firm. He walked over and placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. Noah didn't flinch, which was rare for him. "Dr. Rana," Celine greeted him. "I did not summon you." "No, but I assumed you would need a human perspective to explain why my student just turned a Granor into a paperweight," Dr. Rana said. He looked at Noah. "You held back, didn't you, son?" Noah nodded slightly. "I just increased the local gravity by 300%. I could have gone to 10,000. And that," Dr. Rana said, turning to the elder and the principal, is the point. Humanity has a history of using power poorly. We destroyed our own ecosystems before we learned to save them. We conquered before we learned to cooperate. Noah here had the power to obliterate Drak. He chose instead to immobilize him. He chose control. Dr. Rana looked at Elder Mira. The problem isn't just that Drak is a bully. The problem is that the school allowed him to think bullying was a form of leadership. We need to restructure the social hierarchy, not just punish one lizard. Celine bobbed in her tank, processing the inputs. A code of conduct is necessary, but rules written by administrators are rarely followed by teenagers. They need peer leadership. The lights in the room shifted to a decisive gold. I am establishing a new student body, Celine announced. The Harmony Council. Its mandate will be to draft the new Body Respect Code, adjudicate minor interspecies disputes, and organize cultural integration workshops. She looked at the three students. Noah Reed. You are appointed for your understanding of force application and restraint. Kira Larktail. You are appointed as the representative of the aggrieved parties, and for your newfound backbone, Irix. Irix beeped, startled. Me, I am just a historian. I observe. I do not participate. You are the only one who records the truth, not the propaganda, Celine said. You will be the secretary. You will ensure the council remains transparent. And the fourth member, Noah asked, raising an eyebrow. A council needs an even number for deadlock, or an odd number for voting. Who is the fourth? Celine's tentacles curled, in what could only be described as a mischievous smile. The fourth member needs to learn empathy through exposure, Celine said. Drak will be the fourth member. Attendance is mandatory. His alternative is expulsion, and a permanent mark on his record detailing his submission. Noah choked back a laugh. Are you making him join the club that discusses feelings? I am making him listen, Celine corrected. For the first time in his life. The transition from public spectacle to committee member was a jarring shift for Noah. As they left the office, the adrenaline of the duel began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. Using the gravity stones required an immense amount of mental focus. It was like holding a complex architectural blueprint in his mind, while simultaneously solving a calculus equation. He leaned against the wall of the corridor, closing his eyes. Are you okay? Kira asked softly. She was standing close to him, her bell chiming softly with her movements. I feel like I just bench-pressed a moon, Noah admitted. And I am terrified. Terrified, Kira tilted her head. You just defeated the biggest student in school without throwing a punch. What are you afraid of? I am afraid of becoming a weapon, Noah whispered. He opened his eyes, looking at his hands. My mother sent me here to see if this station was safe. If I start using my power to solve problems, people will stop seeing me as a student. They will see me as an enforcer, or a threat. Dr. Rana, who had walked out with them, stopped. He leaned against the opposite wall, crossing his arms. Power is not a uniform you can take off, Noah, the teacher said gently. It is part of your biology, part of your heritage. You cannot hide it. The question isn't whether you are a weapon. The question is, whose hand is on the trigger? Noah looked at the teacher. I want it to be my hand. Then keep doing what you did today, Dr. Rana said. You stood up, but you didn't destroy. That is the hardest path, but it is the only one that builds a future. Kira reached out and touched Noah's arm. Her hand was warm, her claws sheathed. You are not a weapon to me, Noah. You are just the guy who helps me with math and likes spicy fish jerky. Noah managed a tired smile. The jerky is growing on me, but don't tell anyone. The first meeting of the Harmony Council took place 3 days later, in a small, circular conference room overlooking the cloud layer. It was awkward. In fact, awkward was an understatement. It was socially catastrophic. Drak sat on one side of the table, his arms crossed, staring at the wall. He looked smaller, without his entourage. The humiliation of the arena still clung to him like a bad smell. He refused to look at Noah or Kira. Noah sat opposite him, spinning a stylus between his fingers. Kira sat next to Noah, her tail neatly coiled in her lap. Irix was at the head of the table, his datapad ready. "The meeting will come to order," Irix said, his synthesized voice trying to sound authoritative. Item 1. The drafting of the Body Respect Code. "This is stupid," Drac grumbled. "I am a warrior. I shouldn't be sitting here talking about manners." "You are not a warrior, Drac," Noah said. He didn't say it meanly, he said it like a statement of fact. "Warriors protect the pack. You were just hunting the weak." Drac slammed his hand on the table. "You used magic tricks, you didn't beat me with strength." "I used the environment," Noah corrected. "But that is not why we are here," Celine's voice chimed in from the intercom. "Drac, you are required to listen. Miss Larktail has the floor." Kira took a deep breath. She looked at Drac. For months, she had been unable to look him in the eye. Now, she forced herself to hold his gaze. "It is not just about the pain, Drac," Kira said quietly. "When you pull my tail, you are not just hurting me. You are telling me that my body does not belong to me. In my culture, the tail is our balance. It is how we express love, fear, and honor. When you grab it, you are stealing my voice." Drac scoffed, but he didn't interrupt. "Imagine," Kira continued, her voice trembling slightly, "if someone came up to you every day and grabbed your throat pouches. Just to see them inflate. Just to laugh at the sound you make." Drac's hand went instinctively to his throat. His throat pouches were a sensitive display of aggression and mating fitness. To touch them uninvited was a death sentence in Granor culture. "That's different," Drac muttered. "Why?" Noah asked. "Because you are big and she is small." Drac fell silent. He looked at Kira. Really looked at her, not as a target but as a creature with her own biology, her own instincts. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. "I didn't know about the voice thing," Drac mumbled. "I just thought it was funny when you jumped." "It wasn't funny," Kira said. "It was cruel." The silence stretched. It wasn't a resolved silence, but it was a thoughtful one. "Fine," Drac grunted. "No tail pulling. Put it in the rules. Whatever." It was a small victory, a microscopic victory. But to Irix recording the minutes, it felt like a triumph. Over the next 2 weeks, the atmosphere at Nebula Harbor Academy began to change. It wasn't overnight and it wasn't perfect, but the shift was palpable. The council launched the Body Respect Day. It sounded like a bureaucratic nightmare, but Kira had an idea to make it practical. They set up stations in the main hall, where students could experience the sensory limitations or sensitivities of other species. There was a station where Granors could strap on a weighted prosthetic tail. The goal was to walk across a balance beam while people threw foam balls at the tail. Noah watched from the balcony as a massive Granor, one of Drac's former cronies, stumbled and fell off the beam when a foam ball hit the prosthetic. The Granor looked shocked. "It throws your whole center of mass off," the Granor exclaimed. "It's like someone yanked my spine." "Exactly," Kira said, standing nearby with a clipboard. "Now imagine feeling that every morning on the train." The Granor looked at her, then nodded slowly. "My bad, Larktail. My bad." Meanwhile, Irix was busy implementing the anonymous reporting channel. He called it the Silent Observer Protocol. Students could send encrypted messages about bullying or harassment directly to the council. Irix sat in the server room, watching the reports come in. Report 402. A group of avians are dropping nuts on the heads of the subterranean students. It is annoying and dangerous. Report 403. Someone is stealing the heat lamps from the reptile dorms. For the first time, Irix felt useful. He wasn't just hoarding history. He was using it to shape the present. He was turning observation into action. And then there was the tail talk. Kira had been nervous about it. She reserved a small seminar room in the library. She expected no one to show up. But when she arrived, the room was half full. There were Falari, of course, but also other species with appendages, beings with tentacles, wings, and horns. Even a few humans were there curious. Kira sat in the front. She talked about the crystal bell. She talked about the knots. She talked about how it felt to be afraid of her own body. Halfway through, a small freshman, Granor, raised his hand. He looked terrified to be there. "My horns," the little Granor said, his voice squeaking. "They are growing in. They itch. And the older boys file them down. They say it makes me tough, but it hurts." The room went quiet. A Falari boy stood up and walked over to the Granor. "My claws hurt when they come in too," he said. "Do you want some numbing sap?" Kira looked at Noah, who was standing at the back of the room. Noah gave her a thumbs up. It was a small room. It was a small moment. But it was a safe space. And in a school floating on a gas giant, safety was the most precious commodity of all. 1 month after the duel, the evening sun was setting, painting the clouds of Aurelios in shades of burning orange and deep violet. Noah and Kira sat on the observation balcony of the East Spire. It was their quiet spot away from the council, away from the staring eyes of the other students. They sat side by side, their legs dangling over the edge of the platform, thousands of miles of empty sky beneath their feet. "Drac actually signed the apology form today," Noah said, breaking the silence. "He used a crayon and he pressed so hard, he tore the paper, but he signed it." Kira laughed softly. "Progress is messy." "He also asked me if I could teach him how to make things float," Noah added. "I told him to start by reading a physics textbook. He looked like I had asked him to eat his own foot." Kira leaned back on her hands, looking up at the first stars appearing through the atmospheric haze. "You changed him, Noah. You changed everything." "We changed him," Noah corrected. "I just knocked him down. You are the one helping him stand up without being a jerk about it." He looked at her. The wind was ruffling her ear fur. The crystal bell on her tail was silent, resting peacefully on the metal grating. "Kira," Noah said. "About that day, in the arena." "Yes. I was angry," Noah admitted. "When he grabbed you, I wasn't thinking about justice. I wasn't thinking about the code. I just wanted to hurt him. For a second, I wanted to crush him." He looked down at his hands, clenching them into fists. "That's why I am scared. The line between protecting and destroying it is thinner than a piece of paper." Kira moved. She didn't speak. Instead, her tail uncoiled from her lap. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace. The silver tuft at the end with the crystal bell lifted and wrapped gently around Noah's wrist. It wasn't a tight grip. It was a soft, warm pressure, a tether. Noah froze. He looked at the tail wrapped around his arm. He knew what this meant. He had read the books. In Falari culture, allowing someone to touch the tail was trust. Initiating the touch, wrapping it around a limb, was a claim. It meant you are safe with me. I am safe with you. "The line is thin," Kira whispered. "But you are not alone on it anymore. If you start to slip, I will pull you back." She looked at him, her amber eyes shining. "And if I get scared, you will hold me steady." Noah felt a warmth spread up his arm, settling in his chest. It was a different kind of gravity. It didn't pull him down. It anchored him. He turned his hand over his fingers, gently brushing the fur of her tail. "Deal," he said softly. "Deal," Kira replied. From the shadows of the doorway, Irix watched. He had his datapad out, but for once he wasn't typing. He just watched. "Humans and Falari," Irix muttered to himself. "Biologically incompatible, culturally divergent, and yet statistically significant emotional resonance." He smiled, a flicker of light in his chest. He turned to leave, deciding to give them their privacy. But as he walked down the corridor reviewing his logs for the day, Irix stopped. He scrolled back to a data packet he had intercepted during the duel an encrypted burst transmission that had originated from Noah's personal biosignature and bounced off the core gravity stone. Irix had thought it was just the power surge. But now, looking at the waveform, he saw a pattern. It was a frequency code, and it matched a file in the restricted archives of the Luminid History Bank. Irix's internal light turned a cold, worried blue. Entry 015, he typed rapidly. Anomaly detected. Noah Reed's resonance with the gravity stones is not just genetic aptitude. It is a key. And the transmission he sent during the fight wasn't just controlling the stone. It was unlocking something. Irix looked back at the balcony door. The romantic moment was beautiful, but the history beneath it was suddenly much darker. He doesn't know, Irix realized. Noah thinks he is just a student with a gift. He doesn't know what he really is. Irix closed the file. The falling action was over. But the story wasn't done. The real secret of Nebula Harbor Academy was waking up, and the boy who could control gravity was the only one who could stop it or accidentally destroy them all. Irix hurried down the hall. He had to find Principal Celine. The time for observation was over. The time for panic had officially begun. The monorail car hummed with the familiar vibration of magnetic levitation cutting through the golden morning haze of the new semester. The air inside smelled different than it had 6 months ago. It smelled less like fear and ozone and more like berry-scented shampoo and fresh coffee. Irix sat in his usual spot, his silicate body glowing with a contented, soft amber light. He held his datapad, but he wasn't hiding behind it anymore. He was polishing the screen. In the center of the car, a group of first-year students was huddled together. They were fresh off the transport shuttles, wide-eyed and nervous. Among them was a young Falari girl, barely older than a kitten clutching her backpack straps. Her tail, fluffy and uncontrolled, twitched nervously behind her. Standing over her were 2 upperclassmen avians with sharp beaks and restless wings. They were laughing, nudging each other, their eyes fixed on the twitching tail. "Look at that," one avian squawked. "It's like a metronome, but if you pull it, she sings." The avian reached out a clawed hand. The young Falari froze, her ears flattening, in that heartbreaking instinctive gesture of submission Irix knew too well. But the hand never made contact. 3 heads turned in unison from the front of the car. On the left was Noah Reed. He wore his signature gray hoodie, though it looked cleaner now, and his headphones were around his neck. He didn't frown. He just looked at the avian with a calm, terrifying boredom. In the middle was Kira Larktail. She was reviewing a navigation chart, but her amber eyes snapped up sharp and dangerous. The crystal bell on her tail gave a single, warning ring. And on the right, taking up 2 seats, was Drac. The Granner was eating a bag of rock nuts, crunching them loudly. He stopped chewing. He turned his massive scaled head slowly toward the avians. He didn't roar. He didn't threaten to break their bones. He simply raised one thick eyebrow and pointed a claw at the Respect Protocol poster glued to the wall behind them. "Read," Drac grunted, showering a few crumbs on his chest. "Then sit, or I will demonstrate gravity on your behalf." The avians paled. Their feathers ruffled in panic. They mumbled apologies, bowed awkwardly to the Falari girl, and scrambled to the far end of the car. The young Falari girl looked at her saviors. She whispered a "thank you." Kira winked at her. Noah went back to his book. Drac returned to his nuts, muttering something about feathery nuisances and lack of discipline. Irix typed a new entry into his log. Entry 104. The ecosystem has stabilized. The predators have become the guardians. The prey has learned to bite back, or at least to stand behind the bigger teeth. Social evolution is proceeding ahead of schedule. It was a small moment, one that would pass unnoticed by the galaxy at large. But to Irix, who remembered the sound of a snapping bell and the silence of complicity, it was a symphony. The Harmony Council had become a fixture of Academy life, much to everyone's surprise. What started as a disciplinary measure had evolved into the most popular club on the station. The workshops were chaotic, but effective. On Tuesdays, they held perspective swap sessions. Irix watched with amusement as a group of Granors attempted to navigate an obstacle course while wearing sensory deprivation helmets that mimicked the poor depth perception of humans. "I can't see the floor," one Granor wailed, flailing his arms. "Welcome to my world," Noah called out from the sidelines, timing them with a stopwatch. "Now try doing calculus like that." On Thursdays, they held friendly duels. The rules were strict, enforced by Drac, who had become a surprisingly meticulous referee. He measured ring-out distances with a laser tape and disqualified anyone who used derogatory slurs. "Trash talk is fine," Drac would bellow at the combatants. "Slurs are lazy. Be creative or get out of my ring." Irix compiled all of this, the successes, the failures, the hilarious misunderstandings, into a digital volume he titled The Handbook for Survival in a Multi-Species Environment. Principal Celine had reviewed the first draft and ordered 10,000 copies to be uploaded to the freshman orientation servers. But the real work, the deep work, was happening in the silence between the events. One afternoon, Irix was summoned to the deep core vault. This was the restricted area beneath the academy, where the primary gravity stone hummed its endless song. It was a place of immense pressure and cold violet light. Principal Celine was waiting for him. She wasn't in her usual tank. She was inside a pressurized exosuit that allowed her to float near the stone itself. "Secretary Irix," Celine's voice crackled over the comms. "Thank you for coming." "Is there a problem with the council?" Irix asked, his internal light dimming with worry. "Did Drac eat the rulebook again?" "No," Celine said. "The council is performing admirably. I brought you here to finish the history you have been writing." She gestured with a mechanical arm toward a console embedded in the rock wall. "Access file Alpha 90, authorization code Mother." Irix plugged his datapad into the console. The encryption was heavy layers of old Earth military code mixed with Falari ciphers. But his historian protocols unraveled it. A holographic file sprang to life. It showed a blueprint of the Nebula Harbor Academy from 30 years ago, and it showed the personnel manifest of the design team. Irix's optical sensors widened. "Lead architect Dr. Elena Reed." "Reed," Irix whispered. "Noah's mother." "She was brilliant," Celine said softly. She understood that stone and steel were not enough to hold a station in the clouds of Aurelios. She knew that the gravity stones were semi-sentient. They responded to intent, to emotion. The file played a video log. A woman appeared. She had Noah's messy black hair and his tired gray eyes. She looked exhausted. "Log final," Elena Reed said in the recording. "The station is stable, but the social lattice is fragile. We are putting predators and prey in a tin can and floating them over a gas giant. The stones feel the tension. If the students live in fear, the stones vibrate with dissonance. If the station becomes a place of hatred, the gravity will eventually reject us." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "I am leaving, but I am sending my son. Not yet. When he is ready. He has the gift. He can hear the stones. His mission is not to maintain the station. His mission is to judge it. If Nebula Harbor becomes a place of tyranny, Noah will know. And he will have the power to let it fall. Better to let it sink into the clouds than to let it become a breeding ground for monsters." The recording ended. Irix stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the vault. "Noah isn't just a student," Irix said, his voice trembling. "He is a kill switch." "He was," Celine corrected. "He came here weighing the value of our existence. Every time he touched the walls, every time he listened to the hum, he was deciding if we deserved to survive." She floated closer to Irix. "But then, something happened. Look at the seismic data from the first day of the semester." Irix pulled up the graph. It showed a spike in the gravity resonance. It was the exact moment on the train when Noah had tied the bell back onto Kira's tail. "The knot," Celine said. "The vow of the silent moon. It is a binding ritual." But Noah performed it while channeling his latent connection to the stones. He didn't just tie a bell to a tail Irix. He tied the station's heart to Kira's. Irix looked at the data. The frequency of the gravity stone now matched the resonant frequency of Kira's crystal bell perfectly. When she is happy, Irix realized, the station stabilizes. When she is afraid, the station shakes. And when she and Noah are together, the efficiency of the gravity drive increases by 200%, Celine finished. They are a binary star system. They are keeping the school aloft not with engineering, but with... She hesitated, searching for the scientific term. "Love," Irix suggested. "Symbiotic resonance," Celine corrected firmly, though her lights turned a soft, romantic pink. "Let us stick to the data." "Does Noah know?" Irix asked. "He suspects," Celine said. "He knows he feels the station. He knows he feels Kira. I do not think he realizes that his mother sent him here to be an executioner, and he ended up becoming an anchor." She turned her exosuit to face Irix. "And that brings us to you, Irix." "Me. You call yourself a historian. You think you are just a camera. But where do you think your daily logs go?" Irix blinked. "To the school archives. To the basement servers." Celine pressed a button. The console screen shifted. It showed a transmission line beaming directly from Nebula Harbor through the Jumpgate network to a massive space station in the core worlds. The seal on the destination was a golden eye, surrounded by 7 stars. "The Interstellar Wisdom Council," Irix gasped. "The highest governing body of education in the galaxy." "They have been reading every word," Celine said. "Every entry about Drax's bullying. Every entry about Noah's restraint. Every entry about Kira's courage. Your logs are not homework, Irix. They are the foundation of the new Galactic Education Treaty." Irix felt his knees, or the silicate struts that served as knees, go weak. He sat down on a crate. "I didn't know." "You were chosen because Luminids are supposed to be objective," Celine said. "But you broke protocol. You stopped being objective. You started caring. You started judging. And that is exactly what the Council needed. They didn't need data. They needed a conscience." Irix looked at his hands. He remembered the shame he felt on the train, watching Kira cry. He remembered the fear in the library. He remembered the pride in the arena. "I thought I was useless," Irix whispered. "I thought I was just watching." "The observer affects the observed," Celine said. "Quantum physics and history. You didn't just record the change, Irix. By witnessing it, by validating it, you made it real. You are not a camera. You are the mirror in which this academy learned to see its own face." She handed him a data chip. "This is the final update for the Council. They want to know the conclusion of the Noah Reed case study. They want to know if the experiment was a success." Irix took the chip. He held it tightly. "It wasn't an experiment," Irix said, standing up. His light burned brighter than it ever had a brilliant, blinding gold. "It was a story, and I know exactly how to end it." The sun was setting over Aurelios, turning the cloud layer into a sea of fire and blood orange. The observation deck was empty, save for 2 figures standing at the railing. Noah leaned his elbows on the metal bar, the wind tossing his hair. Kira stood next to him. She wasn't wearing her uniform jacket. Her tail was loose, swaying gently in the breeze, the crystal bell making a soft melody that seemed to harmonize with the low hum of the station. "My mom would have liked this view," Noah said quietly. "She built it," Kira said. "Or helped build it." "She built the cage," Noah corrected. "She was worried about the animals inside." He turned to look at Kira. "I was supposed to fail this place, you know. I came here with a checklist of reasons to shut down the gravity drive. Too much conflict, too much segregation, too much pain." "And now?" Kira asked. She stepped closer. What does the checklist say? Noah looked at her. He looked at the scars on her hands from the duel training. He looked at the way her ears twitched when she heard a distant laugh from the courtyard. I threw the list away, Noah said. It was outdated, Kira smiled. She turned her back to the railing leaning against it, so she faced him. In my village on the Falari homeworld we have a saying. You cannot tie a knot with one hand. Practical advice, Noah said. It means, Kira continued ignoring his deflection. That connection requires tension. It requires two forces pulling in opposite directions, meeting in the middle to create strength. She took a deep breath. Her ears turned pink. Noah, in the arena, and in the library, and on the train. You have been my opposing force. You pulled me back when I wanted to run. You held me steady when I wanted to fall. I just did the math, Noah mumbled, looking away, his cheeks flushing a faint red. Stop being a textbook for 5 seconds, Kira teased. She reached out. Slowly, deliberately, she extended her tail. It curled through the air between them, a silver, furry question mark. It wrapped around Noah's left wrist. Then, it moved up, winding gently around his forearm, the crystal bell resting against his pulse point. Noah stopped breathing. He stared at the tail. He felt the warmth of it, the solid, muscular reality of it. In public, Kira whispered. Under the sky, where everyone can see. Noah looked up at her eyes. This is a declaration. It is, Kira said. It means you are mine, and I am yours. And if anyone wants to challenge that, they have to fight both of us. Noah swallowed. His heart was hammering against his ribs, a rhythm that he could feel echoing in the floorboards beneath his feet. The station knew. The stones knew. He reached into his pocket. I don't have a tail, Noah said. And I don't have a bell. He pulled out his hand and opened his fingers. Resting in his palm was a small, jagged piece of black rock. It was suspended in a tiny magnetic field generator, floating a millimeter above his skin. It was a chip of a gravity stone. And it was vibrating. It was pulsing in perfect sync with the crystal bell on his arm. I tuned it, Noah said, his voice raspy. To you, to your bell. It acts as a localized stabilizer. As long as you have this, you will never lose your balance, no matter how high you fly. Kira stared at the stone. It was priceless. It was illegal. It was the most romantic thing she had ever seen. She took it. The moment her skin touched the magnetic field, the stone flared with a brilliant purple light. You are a nerd, Kira whispered, tears pricking her eyes. I am your nerd, Noah said. Kira laughed, a wet, happy sound. She pulled him closer by the tail wrapped around his arm. Noah didn't resist. He leaned in, and as the twin suns of the system dipped below the horizon, the human boy and the Falari girl stood silhouetted against the stars, bound together by ancient knots and future physics. In the shadows of the doorway, Drac leaned against the frame. He was holding a broom, part of his mandatory community service punishment. He watched the scene on the balcony. He rolled his eyes so hard, it probably hurt. Unbelievable, Drac grumbled to the young Granor standing next to him. Look at them. Disgusting. Species mixing. Feelings. Ugh. The young Granor, a freshman named Vrock, looked at Drac. Should we go beat them up? Drac smacked the back of Vrock's head. Not hard. Just a tap. No, you idiot, Drac growled. We leave them alone. That is Noah Reed. He can turn your insides into soup with a thought. And that is Kira Larktail. She can kick your head off before you blink. Drac looked back at the couple. His expression softened just a fraction. The scales around his eyes relaxed. Besides, Drac muttered, turning away and starting to sweep the floor with aggressive vigor. They earned it. Strength respects strength. Now pick up that trash, Vrock. If Principal Celine sees this hallway is dirty, she will make us listen to whale songs for another 3 hours. Irix sat in his room, the final log entry blinking on his screen. He looked out the window. The Nebula Harbor Academy drifted serenely in the night. It was no longer just a collection of metal and stone. It was a living organism breathing with the collective relief of 5,000 students. He thought about Noah, the boy who carried the weight of judgment and chose mercy. He thought about Kira, the girl who carried the weight of victimhood and chose dignity. He thought about Drac, the bully, who was learning that the hardest muscle to train was the heart. And he thought about himself, the historian who stepped out from behind the camera. Irix began to type. Final entry. The academic year concludes. The structural integrity of the station is at 100%. The social integrity is developing. We often think that change requires fire. We think it requires wars and treaties and grand speeches. But history, I have learned, is not written in ink. It is written in the small choices. The choice to retie a bell. The choice to stand up on a train. The choice to put down a fist and open a hand. The universe is vast and cold and full of empty gravity. But here, in the eye of the storm, we have found a way to be warm. This is Irix, Secretary of the Harmony Council, signing off. Irix saved the file. He pressed send. The data packet shot out from the station, a beam of light traversing the darkness carrying the story of the human, the cat girl, and the knot that saved them all, to the farthest corners of the galaxy. Irix turned off his datapad. He stood up and stretched his glowing limbs. It was late, but he wasn't tired. Tomorrow was a new day, and he had heard a rumor that Drac was going to try and bake a cake for the council meeting. That Irix decided with a smile was something he definitely needed to record. He walked out of his room, humming a tune that sounded suspiciously like the chime of a crystal bell. The halls of the academy were quiet, but they were no longer silent. They were humming back.